So this week I am discussing, or I'm talking about the concept of what is the center of video gaming. I was trying to make, kind of this presentation, talking about the tribes and the clans within video games, and I found I couldn't figure out who the center was. And so for the last two videos I've been discussing that. This discussion is actually kind of old, which is more important, the people who live or the people who draw? Who draw the people who live. And my last video was based on the concept that it's the people who draw the people who live that make the culture, and why they're important and how they kind of abuse that power a little bit. But this video is entirely about the fans, the players themselves. I believe in this video, I believe that they are the center, or in this video I will try to show that they are in fact the center. They are the ones that created the culture, and gaming has kind of molded around them for their needs. That doesn't mean that true fans are in fact the players. That's another subject that we're going to have to discuss in this video. So let's get started. I honestly would love to hear the story of the guy who dressed up this way. I mean, he looks like a video game shaman. By the power of 8-bit, I have been blessed with the knowledge that will bless you in your life, so long as you follow the chosen way. Up, up, down, down, left, right, up, A, B, start. Oh, select, start. I apologize. But they are the center. The reason why they're the center is because they're the ones who played the video games and decided to make a culture out of it. The game creators are often not people interested in video games. They're just looking for a job, and they happen to have a set of skills that would be good, and they get a job at video games. But if we were to be honest, many of them are overworked and they kind of look for work elsewhere. Many of the game creators are movie makers, or the journalists think they're kind of in a low-end field. So they come in not really as fans. They're just trying to make a buck, but they're not really into the culture. But we're saying that they're at the center. Whereas fans, people who like games, who want to be, the people who make the games, or people who write about games, are truly the culture, because they are the ones who go, okay, these are the games we will play. These are the games I like. And I am going to play this game because I like it, and I'm going to associate myself with others who play this game. And that creates a culture because of that association. In the last video, I said that the game creator was the center, so therefore, a little bit outside of him, the journalists and the people talking about video game culture were more close to the center, and then it was the fans a little bit outside of them. Whereas gamers as center, you kind of have this point where the people who write about video games, who truly love video games, are already fans, so they're already at the center. If they truly love video games and they make video games, they're already fans, so they're at the center. The people who want to discuss video games but really aren't interested, they're a little bit further out. And then people who just aren't interested at all, but they might talk about video games, they're at an outer thing. So it's truly, in this diagram, it is the fans at the center. And that is what is going to be discussed for the rest of this video. This is a picture of the line to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. I took it just a couple of months ago. And to be honest with you, this line isn't as full as it once was. This is waning a little bit. It used to be all the way up the stairs and to the other side of the convention. That is not a joke at all. And these people were all going to this gaming convention without creators. They were there to play video games and to enjoy each other's company. Whether or not a game creator showed up, they didn't mind. Game creators did show up. I had some great interviews that way. But they were not caring about the creators. They were caring about the culture created by people who play video games. And so they created the culture. The entire show was by people who collected video games to the point that they were like, you know what? Let's make a convention so that we can bring more people in. And really, they were selling video games. They were so passionate about it. And I could get into that subject a lot. And in fact, I think the next week I'm going to talk about collectors and stuff like that. But this should give you an idea. This show, which is one of the biggest video game shows in all of Portland, is in fact by video gamers for video gamers. And the creators themselves are, they're nice, they're a great addition, but they're not the center. In the same way that PAX, the Penny Arcade Expo, was started by fans, and it's by fans for fans, and the fans just kind of gather around each other. There's game creators definitely there, but people want to play games. They don't care about the creators or the latest game that the creators are showing off. They just want to talk games and they want to be with their own culture. So the fans create this culture. This line is nothing but fans just wanting to hang out with each other. There is no game at the end of the line. They've probably played many of these games. There's no new idea. There's nobody overworked besides me and a couple others for this show. And most of the people who are overworked aren't making games. They might own some games, but they're not game creators. But that is how it goes. But then you ask, well, how do they add to the culture? And that brings up the subject of the painting from the very first video this week. And it talks about the next slide. This is a cosplayer called Blue Tinkerbell. I believe that's what she's called. Blue Navi. She was just this nice person I met, and I was like, okay, that's it. I'm taking your picture because I've been talking to you for a while. And she was just really pleasant about it. And this is her third iteration of this costume. She had been working on it for about a year, and she just kept on improving it and improving it and improving it. She loved games so much, she wanted to show it. And that is something that the game creators cannot kind of control. If you love a video game, you're going to end up showing it. You're going to end up dressing as a character. You're going to throw a convention together. You're going to wear a t-shirt that says, I love video games. If you love video game culture, you're going to do things that will get you, more involved with video game culture. You are going to move more towards the center by showing your love of video games. And this is where it gets kind of interesting, because quite often the gamers themselves are not rich. It was an interesting thing when I lived in Hawaii, and you talked about, what it's like to be local. And local is, the same idea, the fan of the culture or the fan of the game. These are just fans of Hawaii, people who love Hawaii so much, they're living there. And the people we considered the most central to the culture, or the people who represented the local the best, were actually the homeless, because they were just totally local. We could not oppose how local they were. I mean, they were very pleasant people. They were considered part of the community. One guy went missing last year, and I actually worried about him. I have not been back to Hawaii in like 5 years, but I was worried about him because I knew who he was. And that's the same thing here. Many of these people are putting in their own money and, doing their own display by living the video game culture instead of trying to make a game. The game, whether it's good or bad, does not represent your culture. It's simply an artifact within the culture. You can make artifacts doing anything you want. You could be a person who works at the cultural event like the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, or at the Northwest Pinball and Arcade Show, or many of the other shows. You could be an anthropologist who studies video game culture. You are showing that I love this culture so much, I want to talk about it, or I want to display it. And it's the same way as this person. She doesn't live in a, mansion. She doesn't have, she's not making money off of this, or not yet anyway. But she is viewed as part of the culture, and as a very central part of the culture. Whenever you see videos of people at the convention We don't get as many pictures of, people just there. We get shot after shot after shot of people in cosplay because they are kind of the homeless people of Hawaii. They represent the culture greater than anybody else. And man, I hope the cosplayers do not take offense at that comment. I just realized how dumb that it sounds to them. But no, like, this is a representation. You represent the culture more than anybody else, and it's because you love it and you show it. Okay, this person took a picture of himself, and I think this is a really cool representation. Games are made for players, and the reason why this is an important picture is this is way back in 1989, and this is a family playing Zelda, and then right below it is that same family playing Zelda decades later. And this represents video game culture. They chose this game because it represents them, this moment in their lives and how it's helped them grow and how it's helped them become greater. Games are made for players. If you're a game creator, you are not just making a game. You're going, okay, who are the players? What kind of players would like this game? How can I best represent the players? How can I best represent the fans? That doesn't mean the fans you're thinking of. Fans of the Wii were major fans of it, and it sold really well, but it did not sell to the people who believe themselves to be the only gamers. It was made for players in a very specific group, and that specific group actually turned out to be greater or larger than the group that thought that they were the only players. Zelda has been around for decades. My sister loves Zelda. I got her a Zelda book for Christmas, and all of that. And all of that is representation of your love for Zelda. But that doesn't mean that you have to love every Zelda game. I loved Breath of the Wild, but if I were to be honest with you, I didn't enjoy Twilight Princess. I really liked the art of, I forget the game, the one where he's flying on a bird. I enjoyed the art, but I can't say that I wanted to play the game continuously. I enjoyed the second Zelda over the first Zelda. The one where he's a side-scrolling swordsman. I loved that Zelda. It's my Zelda for the Nintendo. And, Ocarina of Time, it's actually aged a bit. It's actually hard to play nowadays because there's so many greater games. Breath of the Wild blows Ocarina of Time out of the water to the point that I don't want to play Ocarina of Time anymore. But my love of Zelda, my ideas of how Zelda should be played and why, and having these family moments with my family where we're staying together and we're just, playing Zelda and we're like, okay, hey, pass me the controller. Oh, hey, pass me the controller, is representation of the culture. And oftentimes the game creator views himself as the center because he's like, well, I'm creating the game. But the reality is he is creating the game for a player. And he knows this. He will make decisions different from what he likes or from what he thinks should happen because he believes the player will like it better this way. And that's why one of the greater reasons why video gamers or the players themselves are the center. They are the reason why the games are made or the reason why the games are sold. And not every game sells. This brings me to the final slide. The reality is, not all games sell well. It doesn't matter what the company tells you you should play. You may not enjoy that game, and that means that that game is no longer a part of the culture. It is an artifact. We can look at it and we can talk about it, but it is more than likely going to be forgotten. There's a lot of times where people can't stop talking about a movie or, a TV show, and then I look at it and I go, how long will this show be remembered? And it takes me a moment to just go, it won't. It won't be remembered. Nobody's going to care that this game or this movie or this TV show was created. I bet you didn't even know there was a Planet of the Apes that came out in the early yachts, or Jurassic Park 3. And there was an argument between, not Gene Siskel, but somebody Roper and Roger Ebert, and Roger Ebert said, I don't think either of these games is going to be remembered, and the other guy went, well, I think Jurassic Park 3 is going to be remembered more than Planet of the Apes. And they had this argument about which one was going to be remembered greater and which one was going to be the greater cultural artifact. And this was a movie, but the same idea stayed. For the most part, nobody cares that Planet of the Apes came out. It starred Mark Wahlberg. It's a weird movie. But if you look in this picture, you can see all of these arcade games. And each one represents a game that people loved to play, to the point that people actually went and found a used game, took it to their house, and made sure it worked. Many of these games are not easy to play or keep or store. The game with the bicycle, past Anthony, that is incredibly rare and very difficult to fix. I know, because it ended up breaking at the show, and it broke my heart because it's actually one of my favorite games. But really, if you look at the center of this picture, you'll see a TV, you'll see a console, and you'll see a couch. And the reality is, when I went to the show and I walked around the show, the people playing the games were families. And that's where the culture began, or really truly proved itself. It wasn't that people played games. It wasn't that people made games. It's that people made it a part of their life. They said, this is going to be part of my life. This is going to be something that my entire family is going to enjoy. So when we go to these events and they sit down at that couch, they are not just reliving their childhood. They are creating a cultural moment for themselves with their families. And that is where the culture begins, really, is where we sit down and we play the game. A game will be forgotten. Game creators will be forgotten. The reason why Shigeru Miyamoto is so famous is he's made so many games that we just constantly remember, that we reference over and over and over again. You may not like his games, but you know he is important because he's made games that we love. And the reason why he is important is the culture has adopted his games as important. He is not the center, the fans are. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love the fans, or that he doesn't make the games understanding what the fans need. By looking at the players, he knows what they need. That doesn't mean he's always right, but the fans are the center of video games. All right, so I am going to make the next set of videos will be talking about the tribes and clans of video game culture. And that is going to come out next week. I am actually keeping it in the air. Are the game creators the center, or are the fans the center? I'm honestly leaning towards both, because it's just what I read and what I look at. I'm actually going to post this to a couple of friends who are journalists and stuff to see what their opinions are on the subject. I hope there isn't any whine from this video. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that you can enjoy this video. And see you next week, and continue being a fan. Bye now.